So today's class is on structural methodology, and this methodology helps us to get a clarity of mind, get clarity in our understanding. Look at all the spiritual literature. It relies a lot on mythology. We have many terms which we have got used to. In this structural methodology, what we get is a frame of reference which is found in all forms of manifestation, from the biological to the human being. We breathe in, we breathe out. Our heart has a systole, diastole. And in thermodynamics, we have entropy, negentropy. So in the biological world, physical world, and semantic world, we have these two aspects which are always coming together. And if we look at how the mind works, it has two modes of operation. And that can be represented in a schematic way by saying one movement of thought is vertical and one movement of thought is horizontal. Now this is only a scheme of reference. In actual life there is no horizontal or vertical. Just like longitude and latitude is used for navigation. It helps us in navigating. But when we walk on the ground, we don't see any line anywhere. It's only a frame of reference. Similarly, we also, if we have this frame of reference in our mind, we can clearly see how our mind, which way our mind is functioning. So we can draw the scheme. First we draw a vertical parameter and then we intersect it with a horizontal parameter. So we get now a vertical and a horizontal. These are two movements of our consciousness. We also get 4 quadrants. We will talk about that later. So let us then mark our parameters. Here we say the alpha. Alpha means the beginning. Alpha to omega, that is Greek for A to Z. So you may say A is the beginning and alpha to omega is the culmination. Now this is one parameter, we call it the time parameter. It's a movement of time. Time is experienced as a flow. It is intersected by this space, what you may call the space dimension, that is horizontal. Space is measurable, time is a quality. That is where Einstein could not understand. He thought of time as, he measured time as if it was space. And that's Bergson's criticism of Einstein. That's a whole different subject. But for us, first thing to understand is this vertical and horizontal movement of our consciousness. In terms of scriptures, we find this in the Bhagavad Gita when Krishna says, Mam anusmara yudhyacha. Mam anusmara, that is a vertical movement. Think of me, think of the Absolute, think of God. That is a vertical movement. The same thing is in the Bible, think of me with all your heart and all your soul. Then there is a horizontal, Mam anusmara yudhyacha, and also fight or do your duty. That is horizontal. That is the world of transaction, vyavahara. Similarly, we can also put the mantra pranava om into the scheme. Now, according to the Mandukya Upanishad, Om is a chatuspada. There is a formula there. Sarvam hi etat Brahma, I am Atma Brahma, so I am Atma chatuspada. That I am Atma Brahma is also Mahavakya, one of the Mahavakyas. So when you say I am Atma Brahma, myself is the Absolute, and chatuspada, it has 4 parts. That is A, U, and silence. So there is a Akara, Ukara, Makara, and then there is a silence. And that is the 4 parts of Om. If we put that in our scheme, where will the Jagrita Sthana, Jagrita Sthana Bahish Prajnaha, Saptangai Kona Vimshatim, Stula Bhuk, enjoying the stula, the gross. So that we will put here, the plus. That is a gross world, or the object. The object that we see, the object we experience, that is in the A. Then we have ukara, that is here, that is designated as a minus, U. So that is a subtle. Or subject. Or you can say name. And this is the form. So we see an object in the gross world, A, and we have its corresponding name in the subjective world. So this is the transactional relationship we have in the world. All gross objects have their names, and we have to correspond each name with its object for perception to happen. So you may say this is the percept, and this is the concept. So this is our Vyavaharic world. When we are dealing with the world of objects, transactions, we are in this realm. Our mind consciousness is moving between the gross object and the subtle subject-object relationship. But that's not the only thing. We also have a which is here. So is the sleep, or you say unconscious. So this became the subject of a lot of investigation after the psychologists discovered the unconscious. This is the realm of physics. The physicists were examining the gross world with the help of their telescope and microscopes and whatnot. The psychologists discovered that this is not the only dimension. We have also an unconscious realm. So this is where all the memories are sitting. And this is called, again, vertical negative. What happens when you go here? This world disappears. When a person goes to sleep, it's as if the wakeful world is collapsing, it has disappeared. Supposing a person is in pain or suffering or misery in this transactional world, the Vyavaharic world, is undergoing a lot of stress and problems. But the same person, if he goes to sleep, is in total bliss, is blissful, is in relaxed, enjoying. So this is like a deeper aspect of our consciousness in which this world disappears. So this has a correspondence with the silence here. Silence is referring to the transcendental. So this is called Avasthatrayi, the three states. This is Avasthatrayi Sakshi, the witness of the three states. So the yogis, the Buddhas, the Jnanis, they experience the transcendental state. Once they experience the transcendental state, they are freed from this Avasthatrayi. That is liberation. So, similarly, just as you had in sleep, the world disappeared, similarly in the transcendental state also the world will disappear. You are not aware of what is happening in the world. Difference. Here you are completely in tamas, you are in the unconsciousness of nature. Here you are in the full consciousness of the spirit, full consciousness of Brahman, Atman, whatever name you want to give it. So here you are full awareness, here you are complete unconscious. But this is one parameter. We have these four aspects of our consciousness. And in the Mandukya Upanishad, it recommends Atma, Avyavaharya, Prapanchopashamam, Shantam Shivam Advaitam, Chaturtham Manyante, Sa Atma Savijneha. This is that we should know this transcendental state. If you see Guru Narayana's works, he is always saying, try to experience the transcendental. Atmopadesavik. This is the witnessing consciousness, unlit lamp. It is the unaffected, it is not affected by these three states. So that is the frame of reference. Now, there is a point of intersection. This is the 0, O. This is neutral. The point where these two meet has to be neutral, has to be a neutral center. It is this neutral center that is the absolute. So we have to learn to come to the neutral center in our sadhana, and that is done by, if you look at the gross and subtle worlds, then in the Bhagavad Gita it talks, be equanimity, cultivate equanimity, be equal-minded in pleasure, in pain and pleasure, victory, defeat, honor, dishonor, etc. By cultivating that equanimity, we start coming to the neutral center. So absolutism, if you see the writings of Guru also, there is a lot of mention of neutral. Absolute is a neutral. So cultivating the neutral state, so that will help us to transcend. Now that gives us 4, okay, this is also plus and this is the minus. So now that gives us 4 quadrants. So all our life activities going on in these 4 quadrants only. So when we are in the world of action, we are in this place. When we are in the world of little more subtle things like art, music, religious devotion, we are in this quadrant. That is on the positive side. Similarly, on the negative side, when we have compulsion, something forces us to do something, and we are on this side. And we have irrational fear, then we are on this side. So whatever experience we have, it will come within these 4 quadrants only. So he wrote the book Taboo and Atonement Taboo. So where is the taboo? The taboo will come here. When you get an urge to do something, the taboo will tell you, no, that's not right. And where is the totem? The totem's here, because fear, the tribals of those days used to have fear. So they will look to their totem for security. So the totem gives security from fear. The taboo gives protection against doing some wrong thing. You get compulsion to do something, to steal maybe, or to hurt somebody. Then the taboo will come and tell you, no, don't do that. So taboo. But the urges are all sitting here, the unconscious. That is called the vasana. It's the same as the vasana. The vasanas are all sitting in the unconscious. They are prompting you to wake up and do. They want to actualize. They want to express themselves. Vasana will then come out in 2 branches. One side will become the objective world, one side will become the subjective. So from the vasana, it will branch out.
Dream state is on which side?
Dream state is here. Subtle dream is here. This is prior to dream. Where is a dream coming from? If you ask that question, or you can say, is it archetypal? The archetypes are sitting here. So they are the unformed, cryptocrystalline. Before a formation, they are the beginnings of the formations. And then they will start expressing. Once they express, because of memory and the conditioning you get as a child, so you know that this is an object, this is a subject. After you have experienced it, they will be absorbed in the absolute like that. And therefore you will get the ananda aspect. The joy, etc. is always coming from the transcendental. And then it will descend back to the unconscious. So you have 2 types of circulation going on. One circulation is this way, between the gross object and the subtle, and there is another circulation between the transcendental and the unconscious. So consciousness is always moving. We have no control over it. We think we are doing things, nothing doing. Consciousness wakes up. How do you wake up? If you don't put an alarm, some force wakes us up, so we wake up. Only in the wakeful consciousness this world is real for us. Only in this 1/4 of consciousness. Then, without your control, you will start dreaming. Suddenly your consciousness will come to dream. In the evening, you will lie down on the bed. Can you decide when to sleep? No. Sleep will come on its own. You cannot decide. You can only prepare to sleep. You are lying down. But the moment sleep comes, you are not aware. So it comes. So that is why they say everything is a movement of consciousness. In Atmapadeshatikam, Chit Prabhavam Ellam. Flux and becoming within the mind stuff, pure. What is the mind stuff? It's consciousness. In Guru's philosophy, Ariva. So knowledge. Stuff of mind is consciousness. Stuff of consciousness is knowledge. Everything is happening in that knowledge only. Nothing can happen outside that knowledge. Or nothing can happen outside that consciousness. So the question is, what is consciousness? This is the fundamental question today everybody is asking. What is the stuff of consciousness? So that is made up, that is Ariva, knowledge. Then the branches of that consciousness you can read in Darshanamala, Bhana Darshana. It will give you 16 types of consciousness, how that consciousness then splits. Because Bhana, Shraya, Bhana, there is an oscillation always going on. There is like the wings of a bumblebee, there is a cross at the name form, these are always oscillating, and that is how we experience. Otherwise, we have two schools of thought. We have the scientific world, which thinks that we are perceiving from the gross object. Light is falling on the gross object, and it is impressions are formed on the retina. From the retina, it is going to the brain, and the brain is then perceiving. And the Vedantins of Shankara school will say, or even I think the Buddhists, they will say it is a projection, adhyaropa. Consciousness is getting projected outside. Snake in the rope. We are projecting our own ideas onto the world. That is the second view. So in the Bhana Darshana, we find the integration of those two by saying it is an oscillating consciousness. There is a very rapid movement between subject and object. For one brief moment, brain is receiving. For next brief moment, brain is projecting. So with that projection and reception, that fast movement, we are able to perceive the world and say that this is a chair. Actually, there is a bhana going on. That is a bhanashraya, the object, etc. That's there in the Bhana Darshana. So for the purposes of the scheme, you can keep this basic scheme in your mind. And this is the fundamental movement and a schematic way of understanding, or a schematic methodology, which is applicable to all forms of manifestation at every level. You can say this is quality, this is quantity, this is time, this is space. So wherever we have categories, you can see that these categories will always align themselves in these two modes of thought. So this becomes like a structural key. With this key you can find out, or start understanding whether you take a philosophy, whether you take science or any subject, you'll see that this scheme is embedded and you can apply it there, and you'll see that that is the underlying structure of how things work. But again, we have to remember, it's only a scheme. There is no real line, horizontal or anything anywhere. It's just the way our reality is structured. So by getting this structural way of thinking, Rajaguru was able to integrate all the possible types of knowledge that we have. So from this hub you can make a radiant like the spokes of a wheel. You can create all the subjects we have. You can put biology here, physics here, and psychology here, like that. You can put all the subjects that we study within this scheme. So that is the scheme, that is a very fundamental thing in all the Guru's writings. And with this, he is able to be able to integrate, and this is where we are a little bit different from the orthodox teachings of Vedanta. They're relying on the text, like Shankara's commentaries, etc., which have a slightly biased, one-sided view. Because in those days they didn't have this scientific knowledge. But we are in the modern age, we are completely in the scientific world, the rational world. And therefore we are slightly biased on the plus side. And therefore something perceptual has to attract people all the time. Just talking about ideas will not impress. You have to have some perceptual side. So there is a bias from both sides. There is a bias on the plus side and a bias on the minus side. The scheme helps us to integrate the two and come to the neutral center. Neutral center is a transcendence. If you want to go to transcendental, you have to come to the neutral. That's dialectical thinking. So it's a whole method called dialectical methodology. And in dialectical methodology, it's always taking the pairs together. Take the two counterparts together and cancel them out. And that's another, you may say, method that one has to learn, the dialectical method. It is found in the Plato's writings also, and the Bhagavad Gita is a good book for dialectics. It's called, Rajaguru calls it the hymn of dialectics. So this is how the thing works. So that is about, that's all I wanted to introduce you. So, and if you want to understand the movement, usually it is described as the figure of 8 movement. So they draw it like this. The movements take place like this, so that it goes through all the 4 quadrants. Our consciousness moves through all the 4 quadrants in its manifestation, or it could move like this also. So you can say when you want to start a project, you start here, you make plans, and you come here and you start actualizing. When you start actualizing, you find there are so many obstacles, and therefore then you will go into the negative side and rethink. You have to rethink the whole thing, and then you start again, and again you make another. So like that you are always moving in a figure of 8 between these quadrants.